Hello and welcome to the third episode of the F-18 simulator tutorial series. In this episode we're going to talk about the AGM-65E Maverick. So the Maverick is an air-to-ground missile that can hit moving ground targets. The E version tracks laser sources, so we can designate something with our targeting pod from our aircraft and even change that point while we're flying and while the missile is in flight and change the missile's target as we need. So the controls that we're going to be using are the red pickle button on the stick. That's what we're going to use to fire the Maverick. We're going to use the sensor control button just below the pickle button, and that is how we're going to choose which screen we're controlling at any given moment. Next, we're going to control the cursor on the screen and the actual targeting pod line of sight with the slew control switch under my index finger on the throttle. Slew switch, which is a four-way switch that I can use to maneuver the cursor around on my radar. So I can push that to the right, to the left, down, or up to move the cursor accordingly. And then finally we're going to click designate under my middle finger on the throttle to lock in the target. Under my middle finger I have the designate button. And when I have the cursor over a target, I can just press the designate button to lock up that target. Our cockpit displays are going to be configured for the Maverick, so we're going to use all three displays this time. Over on the right DDI, we're going to open up the forward-looking infrared. In the center display, we're going to switch it to DDI mode, and then we're going to select our attack radar, and then the attack radar we're going to cycle to ground moving target modes. Over here on the left display we're going to go to the tactical page and select store, where we can see our weapon selection. From here we can select Maverick and let that warm up. So now we're going to select air to ground mode, select our Maverick, and it just needs 30 seconds to warm up. Now we can see over here it's caged, which means that the sensor that detects the laser on the front is only looking straight ahead and it's not scanning around. It does this so that while you're flying around, the sensor doesn't bump up against its field of view limits. And as soon as we have a target locked up on our forward-looking infrared, it's going to uncage itself. Or we can do that manually with the button on the bottom of the throttle. So we can see it scanning back and forth across its field of view right now. An X means it's looking but it hasn't seen anything, and if it turns into a solid square, that means that it's acquired the laser. So over here on the UFCD we can see the ground moving target radar. So that's going to highlight any targets that are on the ground, any vehicles that are moving, and omit anything that's not, like terrain. So we can select this screen by pressing down on the sensor control switch just once, and we can see that we get the cursor in the top left there. I'm going to slew the cursor over with the slew control switch just under my index finger on the throttle, and select one of these contacts. And we can see that as soon as I press designate with my middle finger on the throttle, the targeting pod immediately looked over at where the radar is looking. We can zoom in a little bit more and see what that looks like. And as we get closer, the targeting pod is going to align itself even more closely with the radar's target. Now, the range on the Maverick is 12 miles, so we're going to get a little bit closer before we fire. So now that we're within range, I'm just going to switch to infrared view so we can see the targets more clearly. And I can see that the Maverick has a solid square, so that means that it's locked onto the laser and it's already detecting it. So all that's left to do is flip up the master arm switch and press the red pickle button and launch. Now at longer ranges, the Maverick is automatically going to lob itself up and fly upwards to try and hit the target from above. And at shorter ranges, it's just going to fly directly. We were on the slightly longer range here, so we're going to watch it come down any second now. And a direct hit. And there we go. That's how you use a Maverick to hit a moving target. And now we're going to look at how to hit a stationary target with the Maverick. And this time, because they're stationary, we're not going to be searching for them with the ground moving target radar. Instead, we're just going to use the targeting pod directly. So we're going to expand it to the widest field of view, and then and right now it's slave to the velocity vector. So it's looking directly ahead, right where we're going. So as we fly around, we can just put it where we want. Once we see an interesting target, all we have to do is make sure that the right DDI is the one that's selected, and then we just press designate, and it's going to stabilize around that point. Now I can just freely turn around, maneuver. Meanwhile, it's still looking at that spot on the ground. And I can further fine-tune my aim with the slew control and keep hitting designate whenever I want to lock in a specific point on the ground. Now, an alternative to slewing around and looking through our line of sight to try and find a target is if we already have a waypoint at or near the target, we can just hit the waypoint designate button on the bottom screen to immediately slave the targeting pod to that point. So we're just going to do that to save some time, and now it's already looking near where our stationary target should be. So I'm just going to turn in that direction. And now the field of view button up in the top left can let us zoom in and get a closer look. So I'm just going to use that to fine-tune my aim until it's looking right at that parked aircraft right over there. And then once again, the process is the same. Master arm on, air-to-ground mode. We can see the solid square on the Maverick screen. So we're just going to hit the red pickle button, and the Maverick goes off. Now, while it's flying, I'm just going to keep fine-tuning my aim there to make sure it correctly hits the aircraft. And a near miss, but looks like we got him nonetheless. And that's that for the Maverick. So thank you for watching, and our next episode is going to be on the GPS-guided JDAM bombs.